Okay, I guess to show what I'm doing here. So I'm working within Pro Tools and my sound library, and basically pulling together ambiances and interface sounds. So this is a lot of just editorial, going through, picking stuff out, getting frustrated, listening to tons and tons of sounds. And then from there, sending that stuff out and bringing it into Fmod. I've set one thing up right now. So within Fmod, this allows me to integrate the sound into Unity, which we're using as the middleware software. So we can do, we will also be implementing the music with the same software. So I have the Fmod package within Unity set up, ready to go.
Okay.
And then I can drop in game objects and then make them sounds. Then I can basically, it's an event, and then basically the game object hosts the event, and then within the event I can add whatever sounds. So I don't have any speakers here on headphones. Oh, and I have the arcade building here because I'm using it in the software. So something like this. Here.
Yes, everything was working this morning.
A little bit of light buzz.
Ooh, I like that.
But then I can add these layers in and then use these. I can add these layers in and then create. For each situation, we can have a different mix. So we can use three or four different backgrounds for, say, the alley, the street, the interior, and that can be loaded up all in the same scene as the same event as needed. And then other than that, I was doing some interface sounds, very not my forte, but a learning process. Generally, I work from more cut sounds for post-production, but mainly cutting things into picture and filling out a soundscape. Doing textures, whereas like interfaces are totally kind of an abstract, very delicate. It's like, there's a thing with that's still not totally satisfied, but so it could be pulling in. Let's see what this one is. So that's card shuffle.
Yeah.
That's a processed. It's a vocoded card shuffle. This is a camera lens. That's another lens aperture. And then,
oh yeah, and then what are you doing for like? Is there something you can use in Fmod to do like general reverb, like reverb in the room?
Oh yeah, there's all Fmod's got a whole bunch of effects we can use.
Oh sweet. Yeah, because it doesn't make sense to have sound effects for every specific space.
Yeah, no, we'll change it for each one. So
Nice.
there'll be a parameter that controls that, and
Okay.
so for each, depending on what it is, we can have multiple reverbs, and then we can set from each event to that reverb, so we can have different reverbs for different spaces. They have a convolution reverb, which is a reverb that sort of takes the acoustic fingerprint of a space, using an impulse response, and then you can recreate it. I use that a lot because one of the big ones is making voices sound like they were on location.
Ooh, nice.
Sound effects. Like in this one, I'm using actually for the street ambiances. I have a reverb that imitates a street with a couple buildings along one side, so the slap back from the buildings.
Ooh, oh nice. Oh, sorry.
But yeah, I have lots of like access to those stuff, like ones where it's like it sounds like it's in the next room, or it's through an open door down the hall with an open door. And those kind of things.
Where are you sourcing your sounds from?
So I have my own library that I've used. So pulling from that library mainly. There was the school that I went to. We had a shared sound library. That's mainly where I pull from. So I've been working on synthesizing, using synthesizers to kind of create added layers. That's still in the works. So
you know, I'm almost thinking maybe instead of a synthesizer, think about it passed through a speaker.
Oh, I mean that's easy.
Yeah.
Like, actually, I think it's just for example.
Because I think that's actually what I'm thinking of, is that that's the sound effect, and then it's coming through a speaker in a room, and then it's coming through the player speakers.
Wow. Show you this. So I have a pretty nice little plugin that allows me to emulate different speaker sounds.
Mm-hmm.
So say a toy, an iPhone, old radios. So I think that we still need to synthesize sound, but I can make it a little more real.
Mm-hmm.
That would be, that like if you look at all these different speakers that could be had here.
Well, that's just game design.
Well, I mean, but it's, in terms of like finding what fits, these are all little toys. A baby fire phone truck. But yeah, so that's right. So putting stuff in and integrating into the test session that we have right now.
Mm-hmm. The very, very first thing I did was not in my usual order. Gabby just wanted a mock-up of the timeline board that we're making, just since it's such an essential part of our game. And so just having those visuals is important. So this is what I made. And then I kind of went back to the start of just my creation process, going back to concept art. So first I started with some very general concepts for Hill, our main character. She already existed, like I've already drawn her before, but this was more just me refining her and kind of recreating her in a style that could be more useful and fit well in the game aesthetic that I want to create in this newer prototype. Since now I have control of the backgrounds, which I didn't in the original prototype. Then I decided that I wanted to create the world first. Since it's so new, it has so much detail, and it will take a lot of work to create the balance in between. So I create the world first, and then put the people inside it. So I'm mainly focused on layout from here on out. I started with just a simple, very, very simple sketch of Hill's office to get used to how we're going to show the spaces, which are going to be 3D-ish, that a 2D animated character will move in between. So this was my first attempt at me solving how the planes will work, how characters will interact and move through a space like that, and how I have to I guess, change the perspective and work with 1 point or 2 point or 3 point even, in order to make sure that this works as a video game.
Also, do you want to explain like the lines for in terms of screen ratio?
Oh yeah, I didn't know about that. This is something new because in animation it's mostly just 1920 by I think 1080 something. But for this, I was given by Gabby kind of a safe bounding box space for. I can't remember all
the two ratios.
The two ratios, basically, and a bunch of different screen sizes that fit in between this. So what I have to learn to do now is make sure that all the important information remains inside this middle box here, but that there's still extra information that I can keep around here that's not essential, but still, works.
Basically, if somebody has like, if somebody has like a letterbox, like a lot of these style screens, then you're not just gonna have black lines on the side, and then it's the same if somebody has like a more square top one, that they're not just gonna get black lines. So it's like the space still feels like it exists.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. And then what I decided to focus on, even going deeper into layout, was the main street, because Hill's going to be able to go into a bunch of different buildings. Her apartment, her cousin's best friend's apartment, her best friend's bar, some alleyways in between that. So I decided to work on the main hub. This was the first initial sketch I put together of it after working with maps that Megan created. So you can see it's again a bunch of 2D planes that we're going to make look 3D that you'll get to see with Megan later. Moving in, it's all like super, it's super sketchy, but I kind of just wanted to play with shapes and put in those visual noir and cyberpunk markers. And then as I go in to refine each individual building, I end up putting in, more textures, beginning to solve, okay, how many windows go here? How would the architecture look? How will this be able to look like a unified space? So that was whatever for this. And you can see our beautiful space elevator that Megan loves so much. Is of course in the background.
Sorry, I just feel so like, my dad's generation was, they said they'd give us jetpacks. Mine was like, they said they'd give us a space elevator.
We want to go up.
We want to go up.
Well, it's awesome because like you guys have been talking about it so much for the past month that like it's cool to see it actually like conceptualized in your sketch, and soon it'll be like in the
So hopefully soon I'll get to put in some more planes for Megan to play with, including the space elevator. Then I went to refining the actual buildings. The first one I did was our best friend's bar. The first time I did it, I wasn't sure about how normal maps worked and how the values have to be changed to work within that, because the first time I went through, I just thought about just using my instinct basically for value and contrast about what looks best with shadows and lighting on a building, and where attention should be brought to. So of course I'm like, let's put all the darks and lights right at the entrance and where the sign is going to be. And then I don't think I have it here, but I had to recreate it, or at least change the values of it to make sure it worked as a normal map. So all the planes at the very front are the lightest, and all things at the very back are the darkest, which ended up being kind of counterintuitive. But having this to start with, I think, worked anyways, because then we get to put it over top.
I can also do it the other way. Like, I tried to tell you that, but it was like, I didn't want to overwhelm you, because it was like, it's fine, light in front, dark in back.
It took me like a week to get used to normal maps by itself. Give me another month first.
Yes.
Okay, so that's that. Here's Hill's building first. This is the version with all the textures, shadows, stuff that wasn't included in the normal mapped version, but is the final piece about how it would look. With all of these buildings, really, it's a matter of balancing the 2D and 3D aspects of it, because it is a 2D drawing that we're turning into a 3D space, and we hope people can imagine as a 3D space. And this is a building that's going to be moving back and forth. So in a real world, this building would be shifting side to side and moving with a 2-point perspective or 3-point perspective. So this is kind of making sure this is working with 1-point perspective, or you could just a completely flat plane. But trying to make sure that with the different levels that I've included, it can still look believable as a 3D world. And then again, this is just a shop that's near her apartment. This one actually was done the first time around, again with the textures and shadows, but this is how the proper values worked for the normal map version. So all the lightest things are in the front, and all the darkest things are in the very back, like this hallway. And then one of the things I've started to work on, but haven't gotten to actually solve yet, is the creation of Hill's sprite, which is going to be walking around. I'm using a rig for that, so I'm breaking her down into little pieces to puppet, and I'm going to be using spine to put that back together, and then use just a bunch of deformers to create some walk cycles and some idles that hopefully I can transfer in between her and some other characters to keep the animation process moving as quickly as possible. And another thing I have that I was mostly working on last week was all the props that we're making, which I can just go through quickly because it's not, there's a lot. This was just the first run through of it for Megan's paper prototype. So this was just about finding the shapes that I liked to fit within this pretty geometric world, and finding that balance between retro and future, and kind of thinking about the aesthetics and balancing that with how it can be used, I guess, making sure it's like, okay, this is at least kind of realistic, I can buy it. So we have, you know, just like backpacks, broken collars, drawings, more drawings. It's not very exciting, but it helps me just find the detail in the world, which I think is just as important as the overall aesthetics that keep the world unified. Yeah, that's about it.
We've actually got the a very basic version of the board working. So obviously there's stuff we're working on. Like this shows up at the bottom, right at the top. So the main areas are your notepad, or your your notepad that has your like various tabs in it for like different people, which eventually you'll be able to like click through and walk through. We should probably talk about like ratios, because I'm feeling like already that's feeling really like tight, and even on a
this?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I know you're gonna do real ones. I was just saying like you can see now, and like they're so tiny. So what you can do now is grab a piece of evidence, and you can kind of just put it wherever you want. The line. Oh yeah. There's also the trash, which is really close to the line, so that's probably gonna have to go up over here. And then you can just like drop this up. You can also make notes and then drop them down, and then you can like you should be able to put text, but it doesn't work right now. So
those like personal notes.
Yeah, so the player can like put their own notes.
The game will generate the information based off of the actions that you do in that timeline, or do you have to make notes yourself?
You get evidence that you pick up, and you get statements, which is what you got yesterday for the playtest. This is for like if the player makes a note about like saw them coming out of this place at this time. Like you can't hand that in because the game can't read it, but it's sort of there for you to like take your notes. Depending on playtesting, we may end up like scrapping this, but I thought it was like a nice little tool. Yeah.
Whatever like keeps it in the game, right? Because like I'm sure some players do like nope, just like text files while they play detective games, and like that just breaks your kind of immersion if you have to like click out of the game just to make a note. Or
oh yeah, I mean some people like they really like it, like that's part of the like they have a notebook themselves and stuff, which is like marketing, merchandising. And then here I have a video I made of, I actually can show you guys the fixed version. I close this, but I'll show the video. So last week, this is what I had in terms of things working in the world. So it's in perspective. So what that means is it's not going to be a flat, it's not a flat 2D, so you do get that slight parallaxing depending on where things physically are in the sort of game area. And then you can just see our post-processing, which we've added the new one, so now we've got to play around with that because my broke. Yeah, I had to, the bloom was just going crazy. I don't know what was going on there. Yeah, I managed to get the signs working. So what the problem was, you kind of saw it look like alien language, and that was because of the material I was using. I made a custom, I made a custom shader, and it didn't really like what I did because it was originally designed for a 3D object. So now you can kind of see, actually, I'll make this full screen. So you can kind of see here, you're getting that like very, very slight, and even like inside the house, or you can kind of see a little.
Yeah, especially the hologram stuff they pop.
Yeah, and then like even like with the lights, you kind of get the little like. Yeah, so like really.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and then here you can just see the difference between. So this one actually has a 3D object box built around it with just the face missing. So once we had light, you actually had shadows just from that one, because the rest from behind, I can actually even show you, doesn't register it as having a back. Yeah. So this, I had to build a box for it, and I'll have to do the same thing for all of them. And there's even something I'm probably going to design for this sign, so that there's a slightly skewed box behind it, so that if shadow comes through, it like hits that box.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the playtesting session or the prototyping session that we had? And like what kind of reflections you got out of it? Because what we were doing was basically testing the mechanics and the story, the narrative, and like using the mechanics to move through that narrative.
Yeah, I was mostly just trying to test to see whether the evidence that we had designed actually made sense together. And then sort of like, you know, were you guys having fun? And then when were you not having fun? It was pretty obvious that the running around, talking to people, getting stuff, that was like super fun. And then as soon as it came time to like start making an accusation, there was like a lot of anxiety. And not just like, I think for making the wrong one, it was just that it was just overwhelmed with stuff. So I think Gabby and I are probably going to have a conversation once I get back to Toronto, and we're going to sit down and figure out like, how do we make organizing things easier. I think having things automatically in folders will just immediately make things less overwhelming, because you're not going to see all this stuff. And then that is the danger of the board, is it may become one of those situations where it's like just all this stuff. So that's something we're going to have to keep in mind.
Which is kind of like the charm. Like you want to be able to, as a player, I think, build a case. Like that's kind of what you're role playing as Hill. Like you're drawing connections, right? So maybe that just speaks to like my lack of experience in the genre. Like I honestly have not played many detective or.
But you think about like detectives have their case files. They actually are. You have to be pretty organized to be a detective, like a police detective. You can't just like throw up shit on a board and be like, this is my evidence. It's like you gotta tag stuff. You have to like know where things are. You generally don't pay attention to things that you don't think are important anymore. So, but to have them on your desk would like make your mental space really stressful. So I'm actually gonna try, I think this afternoon or tomorrow, depending on when you get those changes done. You think tomorrow?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. We'll do another playtest tomorrow, and then I think I'll actually like have a folder where it closes, so that it's out of your sight, and then you have to like open it and move it around and stuff.
Cool. Nice.
Yeah, see how that works.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and then also like if you're interested in our process, like we're using Git Kraken.
Is that kind of like Trello? It looks kind of like
Trello. Well, Git Kraken is actually a Git repository user interface. So we use this for version control, and also so we can share files, and also so we don't have to worry about things like people messing stuff, so because we can just go back and fix it. Glow is a new thing that they just added, which is, it's basically like Trello. It's connected. So
cool.
Yeah, it's really nice because it's connected to the project. And then also you can do things like filter things just by your name. So it's like, so everything that I'm on, wait, where am I? Yeah, so everything I'm on, that shows up. That's wrong. Oh, I see. Yeah, so I can actually break it down, so I'm not seeing everybody's, I'm just seeing mine. And then if I need to see everybody's, because I'm also managing it, it's like, okay, great. And then we've got it divided as just like, our wish list is for things that would be great in the final game, but that are not key to getting the core done. And then our to do, in progress, and done. There's nothing done, because of course not. We've only been working on it for 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Actually, that's not true. There should be stuff done in terms of like sketches and stuff, but we haven't. Like your sketches and design should technically be done, but we didn't put it in the to-do. So.
Yeah.